Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Topline. This episode is very special because we have a chance today to bring in another working father perspective with Doug Ulman, the CEO of Pelotonia. Hi, Doug. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Thanks for being here. So every week when we talk to a different working parent about how they're making it all work, we try and keep everything nice and quick and to the point. So I'll start right off by asking you to tell us what's your scenario right now with kids and work and home and school.
Yeah, so we have two kids. They're 7 and 9, first grade and fourth grade, currently in hybrid school. So they go to school 2 days a week and they're home 3 days a week. My wife and I are home, so I'm working from home, go into the office once every other week for an hour or two just to do a few things. But for the most part, we are in our house and we are serving as educators as well as trying to further our careers.
How's that going?
You know, it's hard, it's challenging, it's exhausting, and yet I'm an optimist, and the silver lining is spending this much time with my kids has been remarkable. And I feel like I know more about what they're learning. I feel like I'm more active in their school. And so as somebody who always looking for the silver lining, that is it. But that doesn't mean it's not totally overwhelming and exhausting, and trying to keep track of schedules and the like has been, it's been stressful.
I think it is so stressful because school's really different than when we went, right?
Totally. I mean, they have to keep track of so many things, and even in the elementary grades, in terms of their schedules and their work and their, technology. And, in some ways, I think this will benefit them in the long run, because they are becoming, their maturity level is just dramatically increasing in some ways, and the need to be on top of it. Again, I'm trying to see the positives of it long term,
Yeah.
but in the short term, it's been extremely stressful. And we're very fortunate to have our health and a place to live and food on the table and computers, etc. And we talk almost every day about those who are not as fortunate.
Mm-hmm. So in your work from home day, are you kind of off in a room with a door and you get to work a full day, or is it not that clean and easy?
Yeah, so some days it is, some days it isn't. Although I will tell you, I decided early on, we made a rule in our house that our kids could come in whenever they wanted.
Okay.
And I just felt like we had to do that because otherwise it was too hard for them to know what my schedule is. I'm trying to keep track of their schedule. And our son, Sam, loves that. He loves the fact that he can come in and see dad whenever he needs to. And, it's become part of the norm for a Zoom call to have kids walking by and coming in. And so it's created a little bit of normalcy. But yes, I am in a room with doors that close, and have some privacy. And to be honest, I get really bored being in this room all day. So I like going to see the kids or getting out a little bit and trying to get outside if I can as well.
So for our listeners who aren't in Ohio or maybe haven't heard of Pelotonia, can you tell us about the organization?
Sure. So Pelotonia was started 12 years ago. It's an organization that exists to fund life-saving cancer research. And we have been the great benefactors of a community that has been so generous over the last decade. Collectively, this community has raised more than $217 million for cancer research, 100% of which has gone to cancer research because of our generous sponsors who underwrite all of the overhead. But the interesting thing is that the majority of money is raised through a massive 3-day weekend, which includes a bike ride and a festival and parties and volunteering. And obviously, given what's going on in the world, we weren't able to have that big event in 2020. So it's really thrown our work in a bit of disarray.
Mm-hmm. So we went into lockdown in March, and your event is normally August, right?
Correct.
So when did you feel like you got your arms around what it would be like? What month was that?
So we were really lucky because of our close relationship with Ohio State University and the medical center. We had a lot of insights early on, and the physician scientists there were telling us, look, none of us know where this will go, but it's not going to end anytime soon. And so in March and April, when August felt like a long way off, they were saying August is right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard part for us was not making the decision to change course, because we made that very early. The hard part was the psychological disconnect for people who we all wanted to look forward to something. We wanted to be able to say, gosh, I hope that in August I'll be on my bike with thousands of people raising money for cancer research. And so we didn't want to sort of dampen that hope and that approach, but we also wanted to be realistic. And one of the things that happened early on that really was the linchpin was one of the chief medical officer at the Ohio State University Cancer Center said to me, Doug, it takes hundreds of police officers, doctors, nurses, paramedics, EMS to execute the Pelotonia weekend.
Wow.
You are not going to get their attention at any point in the coming weeks and months because they are inundated and overwhelmed. And I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but he was exactly right. And so we pivoted and made the choice to go with a sort of virtual approach. And it worked out great. It was different and dramatically so, but it was the right decision, and we're excited for 2021.
Mm-hmm. Now, how aware were your kids that you were making this big change? I mean, obviously they know what you do, they know about the event. Did you talk to them about the new decisions?
We did. We talked to them a lot. And, I think early on in the pandemic, one of the challenges was information was changing so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as hard as it was for us, I think for kids to think 2, 3, 4 months ahead is challenging. And I remember vividly my daughter, who is 9, who goes to sleepaway camp every summer for a week or two. And at first it was her birthday, which was the end of May. And will I be able to see my friends on my birthday? And then it was, will I be able to go to camp in July? And these were all big life moments for her way before Pelotonia in August, Yeah. And so I remember the questions around, well, it's outside. Why can't we be outside riding our bikes? Or, what if we all just wear masks? Or what if, and so it was sort of an evolution of the discussion over time. Whereas now they're so used to grabbing their masks when they go outside, they're sort of fully on board with the way life is right now. And they've been super resilient. But in terms of the Pelotonia conversation, I remember there were a lot of questions of, wait a minute, we just rode our bikes yesterday. Why can't we all go ride bikes together?
Right. So in terms of your overall career and having these 2 little ones, how have your children impacted your career arc?
It's interesting. I love what I do, and it doesn't feel like work. And people have said to me over time, you're a workaholic and you work all the time, but it really doesn't feel that way because I'm so passionate about the mission that we're on. And I've tried to show that to our kids, to say, look, when you love what you do, it's really easy to go all in. And yet I don't want to miss being with our kids. And so the pandemic has been a really interesting juxtaposition, because in ordinary times, I would be at events 3, 4, 5 nights a week, fundraising events, community events, et cetera. And for the last 7 months, I've had none of that. And I've been home every night and had dinner every night. And it has been awesome. And I don't say that lightly because, again, I realize that comes from a place of privilege, being able to work from home and being able to be with my family. But it has really changed the way I look at certain things. That said, I'm also really proud that our kids know what I do, and they are very supportive of it. And just last fall, I was going on a trip, leaving in the morning, and our daughter was at the breakfast table, and she said, Dad, I wish you didn't have to go to Arizona today. And I said to her, oh, I wish I didn't either. And she said, but I want you to go because you're trying to save people's lives. And,
Wow.
and I cried the whole drive to the airport.
I bet.
Because I thought, 1, I don't want to leave them, but 2, if she's learned that, then I feel really good about sort of how we've exposed them to the work that we're trying to do.
So what would you say to other working parents right now who are trying to navigate this? You've gotten to a really good place there with your kiddos. What would you say to other working parents to help their kids understand?
I think there's just so much change. And I guess my advice is always to be transparent and to be open and to communicate and over communicate. I think that's what we found through this changing dynamic. But I will tell you, it's hard because our son, the other day, I was actually going to my office just for an hour. And he said, you don't have to go to work. Because to him, work is here now.
Right.
Why would I have to leave? And so I think the shifts in the mindset of kids happens really quickly. Dad works at home now, in his mind, why would I ever go back? So I guess my advice is the communication and the transparency, and to the extent possible, just trying to take advantage of the time if we can, because it seems like it's maybe a break in the sort of frenetic pace at which many people have lived. Not that this isn't stressful, it is, but it's in a different sort of context than the rush hour traffic or the rushing around town or the event to event to event sort of that many people go through.
Yeah, it's a very uneventful stress.
Yes. Boring
Um,
stress. Yeah.
so in terms of creativity and just getting in the flow and feeling like you have the conditions around you to have sort of your best and highest ideas coming out, especially as you're trying to think about, I have to pivot a giant in-person event to a virtual event in 1 year. What are those conditions you need around you to inspire you and make you feel creative?
That's a good question. For me personally, exercise is a big one. Just being able to get outside and move allows me to think differently. Days when I, for whatever reason, don't exercise in the morning, I'm less creative and less innovative in my own estimation. I think for our organization during this time, the removal of all the traditional expectations was so helpful,
Really?
because I think historically, sometimes when organizations are fortunate enough to realize success, they start to think about what others will say.
Mm,
And sometimes they become more risk averse.
mhm,
And I think when everything changed so dramatically this year, it actually freed up our entire team to say, gosh, we don't have to do it that way anymore.
mhm.
Why have we been always thinking about it that way? We can do it differently and not worry about what anybody would say, because all of the expectations have been sort of reimagined. And so I've been thinking a lot about how you keep that context, how you facilitate an environment that removes those external stresses or barriers or expectations to let people do their best work and be as creative as we know they can be.
Mhm. That's an interesting way to look at it, because it is an opportunity to rethink things, and really functional teams can embrace that opportunity and
Totally.
not be in the on the fear side of it. And I think same for families in a lot of ways, because we're rethinking how our family functions. So with regard to this creativity and these conditions, my curiosity about this is really also about partnerships in the home and whether both partners have access to what they need to be most creative, since we've kind of taken all the rules apart. So you've said we many times. So does your wife, Amy Grace, have her creativity conditions around her right now?
She is a very creative person. And interestingly, she has been more creative over the last 6 to 7 months than I've ever seen. In
Really?
fact, last night I just read her new children's book, which she just finished.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that is a project that she just knocked out in the last few months.
Wow.
As we speak right now, she is finishing some pottery because she loves pottery. So I feel like I am the least creative one in the family. Um, and again, I think in some ways, we have less time today, but we have more time for things that are critical, because we're not filling our lives with things that either we were expected to do or there was some reason that maybe we didn't want to prioritize. So I feel like we have more control over our time today than we did 9 months ago, which allows her and others to be more creative.
Is there anything the two of you have decided just to let go of, not worry about, not care about in this new normal?
you know I feel like we're still busy, but we're not busy just running from thing to thing to thing. And that has been remarkable. So we've actually added meditation to our lives, which is something that we sort of one off here and there done, but that's been something we've been doing together almost on a daily basis, which has been great. And again, I don't know that we just didn't prioritize it before because we were exhausted doing everything else. So that's one thing we've added. What have we taken away? That's a good question. I think
Yeah.
just the pace of running from one thing to the next. And there's been more downtime,
Mhm.
which I never enjoyed historically. But now I'm starting to like come around to time to read. And
You didn't love the chilling out time before?
no, I need to be scheduled every hour of every, like, that's just the way I've been wired. And not that that's completely gone away, it hasn't, but I've started to really appreciate, you know, I'll give you an example. I write handwritten notes every day. And it's just something I've done for years. I try to write 5 cards a day. And during the pandemic, almost daily, I will walk. It's about 3/4 of a mile. I will walk to the nearest mailbox and I will drop the cards in. Historically, I would have seen that as a total waste of time. I don't have time to walk and walk back. Like, I'll drive or I'll go to the office and drop them in the, whatever it is. And now, whether I make a phone call or listen to a podcast or something on the walk, it's just fresh air and it's time to get outside. And it's, again, the pace just seems to be a bit slower than it has been in the past.
So this all sounds very idyllic. I mean, we've got pottery, new books being written, walks to the post office box. So what about the unpaid labor of just keeping it all running? Like, do you have dishes piled up? Like, is there anything that's kind of overwhelming in all this?
Every day. I mean, I will tell you candidly, I have had more anxiety and stress in the last year than I have ever had in my life. And, I'm a cancer survivor. I've gone through lots of different challenging times in my life and my career. So this is not all rosy. And there are days when I'm staring at a screen and I start to almost feel like I'm going to have a panic attack, just sort of like, and it's just thinking about the overwhelming nature of the world and the uncertainty and, not knowing when this phase of our lives will change or evolve. And for me, that's a really, challenging piece of this. So yes, the dishes pile up, the laundry piles up. We're rushing to figure out what are we gonna have for dinner? What are we putting on the table? This is not meant to be a positive or entirely positive sort of view. I tend to focus on the positive, but the mental health aspect of this period of time, I think, is challenging both for adults and kids, obviously.
Yeah. Have you seen anything in your kids that's made you think, oh, that's an anxious response, or that's something that's got you just thinking hard about how they're experiencing it?
I think one of the things we saw a few months ago, again, was really related to the uncertainty. It was just related to sort of mixed messages. Well, why can we do this, but we can't do that? And there was sort of almost like a disappointment or a frustration that came from not understanding the rules or the guidelines because they were changing, and it was, again, hard for adults to deal with that, much less kids who are processing all this information. So I think early on, a lot of the behavior sort of was a reaction to not understanding why.
Yeah.
And now I think they've gotten into a great cadence, but you still see different behaviors in the community. You see different behaviors in organizations. And that causes confusion.
Yeah.
Why is so-and-so allowed to do this? Why is, and so there's that debate and discussion all the time. And, it's been an opportunity to have a lot of open dialogue. Let's leave it at that, maybe, but it doesn't mean it's easy. I mean,
right.
I can't imagine a 9-year-old or a 7-year-old's mind having to navigate these changing sort of situations and scenarios.
Yes. And I think when the adults are inconsistent, they're like, wait a minute, I just adapted to rule A and you're over there doing rule B. And that's a really insightful look at it. And I think what you said earlier about the transparency is the only way we can help them at this point, since we don't sometimes know ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is we've seen our kids become very frustrated. I mean, at one point in the summer, it was probably in July or August, there was an article, and somehow my daughter read an article, and it basically said, if everybody wore masks, we could open schools on time. And she got really angry because she wanted to go back to school.
Yeah.
She said, Dad, I don't understand. I see these people outside, they're not wearing masks. Why doesn't everybody just, And it was a good learning for her about just behavior. And because to her, it was very simple. It was like, wait, these people, they don't want schools to open. Why aren't they, let's get this to happen. And in some ways, I was really proud of that because it just sort of showed her, hey, we are actually in more control of this than we think, and we could actually make a big impact. But there's those ups and downs, those moments when kids sort of hear things or are exposed to certain things.
Mhm. Well, I want to ask you one more question, which is about t-shirt design. If you were designing a t-shirt right now for working parents to wear like loud and proud, what would it say?
Wow. I mean, it seems like overused maybe, but um, it would either say we're in this together,
Mhm.
or it would say, I can do this.
Mm,
The positive reinforcement of you're not alone and you can do it. It's going to be hard and challenging as the winter comes in, but we gotta stay positive. Otherwise, I think we can sort of we can take ourselves to a much worse place mentally.
yeah. Well, I like those. I mean, I think that that's an important sort of rah-rah speech that we all need right now because it is heading into winter and holidays and nothing's going to feel the same. And that's a challenge for us and for our kids. I want to thank you very much for your time, but especially thank you for your honesty. I appreciate always getting the parent perspective, the professional perspective, and talking about mental health, which is so important. And I'm grateful to you for broaching all of those topics with us today. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck.
We need it.
Right.